We have some breaking news in the NHL. The Washington Capitals have been fined $100,000. Plus, we have more players added to the COVID protocol list, as well as some more games postponed. We'll jump into the latest news coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. Now, as I mentioned, we have some pretty big news from the NHL this evening. We have an announcement from the NHL that the Washington Capitals, as a team, have been fined $100,000. That is one big chunk of change due to players violating COVID protocols. Basically, based on the statement they've put out, it indicates that players were not observing the wearing a mask and being in close contact with each other, and therefore they're fined. So obviously that's a pretty hefty fine here. I'll show you a quick snippet here of the statement the NHL just put out just a short time ago this evening. So that's pretty substantial. Obviously, anybody doubting whether or not the NHL is taking these protocols seriously and trying their best to protect the players, obviously this goes to show how serious they are. Obviously that's something that the team is not going to be too happy about. Obviously, we don't know which players. That part is obviously private, and we don't know that information. But I would think since the fine is going to have to be paid by the owner of the Capitals, Ted Leonsis, I would think that whoever was guilty of breaking the protocols will be in a little bit of hot water, and I don't imagine the team is too thrilled over this. So that's a pretty big development. Obviously, it's important for them to follow protocols to keep each other as well as everybody else that they come into contact with safe during this, on a difficult time trying to get through a difficult season here. Many places still with no fans in arenas. It's not something you really want to see. And I'm not really sure if any other sports have run into this as well. I don't recall seeing if the other pro sports leagues have had any fines. Correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, but obviously I follow hockey way closer than the other pro sports, so maybe I might have missed something there. But still, this is something that's not common that we haven't seen as of yet. So that's pretty substantial. Washington fined $100,000. Now, it's also been reported here right after this became news that the Washington Capitals have also had to add Alexander Ovechkin, Ilya Samsonov, Evgeny Kuznetsov, as well as Dmitry Orlov onto their COVID protocol list. So it means they're all going to be forced to miss time. I would likely suspect that some of these guys involved here are the ones that might have been the ones breaking the rules. Can't confirm that, but that's certainly how things sound based on the fact they're put on this list. Hopefully we don't see any more of that, and if any other players or teams are doing anything but haven't been caught, I would assume getting word of how hefty the fines are will kind of smarten things up there. But of course, sticking with that same sort of topic, we had more games postponed as well. We know that the Carolina Hurricanes have run into an issue with several positive tests on their team, and now they've had more games postponed because of it. They had a game against Nashville already postponed. They had a 2-game set coming up between Thursday and Saturday against the Florida Panthers, and now those games are postponed here as well. So obviously the Hurricanes are going to be a team that's going to have a fairly heavy schedule near the back end, assuming they don't run into any other additional problems. Of course, the Dallas Stars are late starting, and the teams that are supposed to play those two teams are obviously affected as well. So those divisions are going to be, a little bit trickier, getting more games caught up at a little bit of a later time. Now, there's also been some additional players added to the COVID protocol list. Basically, are players that are not eligible to play right now because they have to be in isolation for a variety of reasons. It could be a positive test. It could be that they were in close contact with somebody who tested positive, or whatever. They have reason to believe that these players need to be cautious and be isolated from the rest of the group. So we had Jesper Bratt finally arriving in North America in the Jersey area, and arrived in Newark earlier to join the New Jersey Devils after coming to terms on a new contract. So he has to go into isolation. Usually what happens for players like that arriving, it's a 7-day protocol with 4 negative tests completed over that time frame. So he'll be at least another week getting into joining the team for on-ice activities. We also had Josh Bailey of the New York Islanders has also been added to that list, so he'll be unavailable for a little while to the Islanders here as well. Of course, yesterday we had more players added as well. We had Blake Coleman of Tampa, Marcus Nunavara of the Panthers, and a couple of Red Wings, including Adam Ernie and Robbie Fabry, were out of the lineup as well due to that as well. So obviously the numbers are kind of climbing a little bit, but it's not something that wasn't expected as we've talked about before, when you hear these cases, it's really not a situation that's going to derail the season at this point. I mean, obviously things would have to get drastically worse, and when you're not playing in a bubble format like we saw them do in the summertime for the playoffs, they're not nearly as safe because they're still, obviously, you know, when they're not playing hockey, they're still going out in, you know, the general public and doing, you know, life stuff. So it's bound to happen with the number of cases across North America that it is certainly possible, as careful as they might want to be, that they could still possibly either you know, pick up the virus themselves or come into contact with somebody who has and therefore have to isolate. But obviously that's a pretty hefty fine for the Capitals. Unfortunately, some more games have to be postponed and some more players added to the protocol list for isolation purposes for a little while. But still, you know, things are, for the most part, happening relatively well. And we'll kind of keep our eye on things, and hopefully the NHL can get through this without too many more issues. But hopefully teams learn to take these protocols seriously so that we don't see any more owners having to cut checks for a substantial amount of money. They're already losing enough revenue as it is. I'm sure the Caps owner is not too pleased right now. So let me know your thoughts on everything going on here. Hopefully we don't run into additional problems, and we can discuss this news further in the comment section. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any other future content. We'll keep you up to date with everything going around the NHL news, rumors, trades, everything to do with hockey. We've got you covered here. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you next time.